Tonight we have a very special guest, Christa Pynn. She's an astrologer and animal behavioral specialist. Through a lifetime of working with animals, she's been able to channel their incredible gifts of healing to people in need. She's worked with therapy horses and most recently with service dogs trained to detect seizures, discovering an astrological breakthrough that identifies the talents of these very special service dogs. Christa uses her knowledge of astrology to select and work with therapy animals. These very special dogs and horses are trained to help people with disabilities, either physical or emotional. She brings out the compassion and unconditional love in these animals that they have to give and teaches people how to bond with their service animals. Recently, she's been involved in selecting service dogs with people with epilepsy and helping them find just the right dogs that can detect their seizure in about 20 minutes before it occurs. For more information about Christa, visit her website at www.christallyn, CHRYSTALLYN.biz or www.animalcrackersmonthly.com. Hello and welcome, Christa.
Hi, Brenda.
It's
Can you
nice
hear
to
me?
talk to you. Yes, I can hear you. You're coming in just loud and clear.
Okay, I'll try not to talk too loud. I've been told I have a loud voice.
That's okay.
I'm so excited to get to talk to you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, you have a special gift, and it's right along, the line of what our listeners, would like to hear about because, we don't do enough on the show about, animal psychics and animal healers. We've had just a few things, and it's always very popular because, people who are sensitive and tend to just love animals anyhow. So I'm going to start out with asking you, when did you notice your special connection with animals?
Well, it's really interesting because when I was a young girl, I was diagnosed with very severe asthma at about 2 years old, and I was told, my parents were told, wasn't allowed to be around animals, anything with dust, hair, stuffed animals, anything like that. And I was obsessed with animals. My mom could not keep me away from any type of animal. I would just go crazy as a young girl. And then as I got to be about 6 years old, I started bringing home all the stray dogs, hoping and begging that someday I get to keep one. As I continued treatment for my asthma and allergy shots over the years, I started to immunize myself. And the more actually that I was around animals, I started again to get stronger resistance to the allergies I was having and was able to maintain them. And so my mom finally let me get my first little dog, little short-haired dog at 8 years old. And it just didn't stop there. I had iguanas and birds and turtles, but I was ultimately obsessed with horses. And at 13, I wrote up a business plan that my dad couldn't turn down. And I got my first horse at 13, and I've just gone crazy from there.
Boy, that sounds like such a parallel. That sounds like my life in a capsule too, asthma, the whole bit. Although there's been research recently was on the internet, like everything, that if children are, and this has come recently now, that children that are introduced to, dogs or cats when they're really young do start to immunize themselves a little bit.
I really believe that that's true. And I think that the funny thing is my first career, I ended up being a mobile pet groomer. So, even my doctors would just laugh. They said, we just can't control you at all. I mean, how could you? But, I thought that if I could make them clean, then I could be around them. Because if they are cleaner, then obviously it's easier on people with allergies. So that was my mission in life.
To clean them.
Yep, I had to get them clean. Well, when I'd bring home all the stray dogs, I'd sneak them up the stairs across the green shag carpet before my mom could see it and get them into the bathtub. Because then I could convince her that I wasn't going to have a full allergy attack. So I tried every angle.
That's great. So you've been around animals a lot, and which way, how do you think that they communicate? If they have a unique way that they communicate with us physically or emotionally, And even mentally, what have you noticed in being around the animals, how they communicate with you, especially like dogs or horses?
Well, you might be surprised at my answer because I thought about that quite a bit. And when I first, like I said, at 20 years old, I went to dog grooming school and then I started a mobile dog grooming business. And in that experience, I was working with a lot of senior citizens because at that time, those were the type of people that would call out a mobile service.
Hmm.
And I started noticing that these dogs, many of them were the only comfort or companion to these senior citizens, were almost like looked like them and acted like them. It was really interesting. And because I was working in a one on one basis where I'd come to the home and then take the dog out by itself and then see the dog interact back with its owner, I started seeing some unusual things. And what I saw was that I believe the way that dogs communicate and horses is they mirror us. And what happens for a lot of people is they'll see something in their dog that they might think is disobedient or a problem, and they try to get rid of it. And they go to trainers or they, try different techniques and they think it's a problem when in actuality, the dog is actually mirroring a problem that they have. And if they would look within themselves, and whether it's anxiety, whether it's insecurity, whether it's anger, those things your animal will reflect, and you'll see it in their behaviors. And instead of trying to fix the animal, if you'll start to look within yourself of how you're communicating in general, just the way you walk in the door when you come home from work, you start looking at how you're what you're doing around your pets, they will begin to calm down, and you will see a lot of those behaviors begin to subside if you're dealing with it. So what we think a lot of times is a bad thing is actually them speaking to us. They are like a vessel, and they can mirror us. And it's
Hmm.
I saw that a lot because a lot of these little senior citizen ladies, they would have a lot of anxiety and different things, and these little dogs would just be emotional wrecks at times because the owner was putting all of their emotional and worries and everything because they were alone onto the pet.
And dogs and cats and even horses can take an awful lot of this. They're such great supports. Now, I have a question for you, and it has been something because I know that we're going to talk about your astrological studies in a moment because I know that you are an astrologer. And I have noticed with my own, I'll just take, for example, the horses that I've had in the past. It seems to me that all the show horses that I've had, all my best show horses, have been Aries. They just come out that way.
Interesting.
Now, don't,
Interesting.
isn't
Interesting.
that interesting? Do you believe
Yes,
that people bring to them the astrological signs of the animals that they need, that are compatible, or that will teach them something?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you shared that because that is true. And depending on what your chart is and the different planets, you can have connections. You obviously, just a little bit I know about you, are a strong businesswoman. You are very intuitive. You're a very strong woman, just your presence alone. Well, when you look in the zodiac and you look at an Aries, they're ruled by Mars and they are very strong and they're very independent. So it makes sense that you are going to be attracted to animals like that. And they are going to be attracted to you because you're such a strong leader. And animals that have a lot of strong, powerful energies need a very strong leader. So
Yes.
I think, and what would be interesting is if, I could get some of those birthdays, if you have any of them, even if we don't have the time, I can still do quite a bit and actually do your chart and and your dog or horse's chart. And I can really give you a lot of insight. It's fun
That
onto
is
that
really
connection.
that's something that not a lot of people think about because I think about it because and I know the astrological signs of all my pets because I'm into it. But
Right.
it would really help people to know that, in choosing a pet too, don't you think? Like if they were
Oh,
going to choose a pet.
well, absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you just a quick little story. My husband and I were talking about this morning. He used to raise beagles and would do the field trials. He was telling me about a dog that was one of his best dogs. And so I asked him if, because since he bred them, I asked him if he remembered the birthday. Well, he did because his name was Spooky and his birthday was October 31st. And he remembered the year, so we looked up his chart. Well, interestingly enough, this dog had like four placements in Scorpio. And he was one of the best dogs. He was one of the most beautiful dogs. And nobody could compete with this dog. But about 2 to 3 years old, he started changing and becoming a little more aggressive. And he started having a difficult time letting him out with the other dogs because he got so competitive. And then he wanted to, he was so athletic and so able to, basically they go find the bunny, they track the bunny. He would miss his steps because he already knew ahead of time where that bunny was. And unfortunately, when they're judging that, they want him to be really detailed, and he was just smarter than all the other dogs. But he got started getting aggressive. And I asked him if he would have known somebody like me that could have said, all right, this dog is loaded with powerful energy. Then you could maybe work with the training a little different. You might have to keep him away from other dogs, or maybe he would have been better suited to be a hunting dog instead of a tracking dog. But
I see.
instead, he didn't know what to do with them. And yet he said he was one of the most incredible dogs, the finesse that he had. And that, and interestingly enough, that is a sign of Scorpios. They're very powerful
They're
and they don't miss
intuitive too.
anything.
What now?
So, so I think it makes sense. We can maybe see what's going on with them. Now, this doesn't take away good training. I believe that we still need to invest in somebody that's helping us learn to communicate with our animals, because we have to know how they see things. We can never expect an animal, a horse, a dog, or any animal to see through our eyes, because the one thing that they don't have is that ability to reason like we do. We have a different intellect than them, and they feel and they sense things, and they can almost see in pictures, is what I believe. And we can project things onto them. So, for example, in riding horses, if any of you guys out there have ridden horses, if you're riding down the road and you start to imagine that you could fall off and your heart starts pounding, just kind of having that image, you might notice within a few seconds your horse starts to get jumpy and spook, because you're sending down that picture to them, even if they had no intention at all of missing a beat. But as a rider, sometimes we'll project negative thoughts onto them, and then they have to interpret them. And they don't have the reasoning ability to interpret them. So that's why a lot of times you get a lot of confusion in your communication with animals, because they're trying to read our emotions. And they don't have the ability to say, hey, what's going on? Did you have a bad day? They're just trying to figure it out. And they're in the moment. They're in the moment. They forgive really easy. That's why they can handle so much. So, they're amazing creatures that, can do amazing things.
So, tell us a little bit about the therapy animals. Now, I know that these are special animals, and they come from they're all ages, and like for the dogs and the horses, and that even now they're having little minis that are become therapy animals. Um, they're the way that they help bond with these people. I'm especially interested in the whole thing with the seizures and the early detection. Tell us about your work astrologically and how you're able to figure out, which would be the best dogs for this.
Okay, yeah, I would love to. Well, let me tell you just a little bit about how I came upon this. I've obviously been studying astrology and charts, and I just have a type of mind. I mean, this is my enjoyment, but I like to go on and look at famous people, famous baseball players, maybe even people with, different mental disorders that we know about. and see if there's any threads, like any common planets that you see amongst that. And a lot of times I'll find some really interesting things. And so I had a dear friend of mine that I've known for over 20 years. Her daughter has suffered with epilepsy, and I've just watched their whole life, to be honest, just be in a prison. The mother, can't, she's worried to let her daughter, who's 37 years old, go out, even to dinner with her friends. And also, her friends, as her seizures got worse, they began to become afraid of her. She couldn't keep her jobs because you never know when one of these are going to happen. And it's so devastating. I mean, you can fall on the ground, you can hit your head, you can really
Mm-hmm.
injure yourself. And so they ended up, after all these years of battling with it, finding out about, through their doctor, about maybe getting a service dog. And when you go to get a service dog, the service dog organization is going to try to match you. But there's no sure way that it's going to work out. Sometimes they'll go through different dogs. And she had gone through several dogs that just weren't working out for what she needed. There's also no way to know if the dog is going to have the unique ability to read seizures 20 minutes before they happen. What you can do is you can train a dog to, you can mimic or simulate a seizure, and that dog can recognize it's a seizure, and then it can alert for help. That's one part that could help somebody with epilepsy. But to be honest, that's not of as much value as a dog that knows you're going to have a seizure and can lean on you, can tell you to sit down and get you in a safe place. That's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, there's no way to predict if the dog's going to have the gift. And so they ended up matching her with this dog. Just after several dogs didn't work out, they told her to go walk around out in the parking lot. And as she was walking around out in the parking lot, the dog began to look up at her, to make eye contact with her, to start to lean on her, to start to push on her. And the founder said to her, you know what? You're going to have a seizure. And everybody was just in shock because they just couldn't believe this was actually going to be happening and that this dog could be alerting. And the dog was alerting. She sat down. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, she had a very severe seizure right there in the parking lot. And that's when they just went, oh my gosh, this dog alerts. This dog has this gift. They didn't even know the dog had the gift. So in my Animal Crackers Monthly, my little video magazine where I do educational video stories, I asked them if I could do a story on them. And as I began to do the story, I just couldn't get it out of my mind. Why is this the only dog out of all the dogs that had come through this program with this ability? And so I decided when I got home to see what they knew what her birthday was. And I opened up the chart and my mouth just hit the floor because this dog is loaded with Pisces. She is a Pisces sun, a Pisces moon, Pisces Mercury. She's Jupiter's in Pisces, and so is Uranus. So if you know anything about Pisces, these are people born from February 21st to like March 20th, right in there. They are the most psychic and intuitive of all the zodiac, and they have the ability to read into the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension, in terms of what I'm talking about, is the ability to read vibrations, energies, emotional, anything, predictive. You may not always know what you're reading if you're a Pisces, but you have this ability. Well, when you look at a chart like this and you see 5 planets lined up, that's like a power pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't it just amazed me that could this be a coincidence? Could this be something? There was 12 dogs that came through this particular session of program. They do about 12 dogs every 6 months. They finish. It takes 2 years to develop a service dog. So once they come through, out of the 12 dogs, this was the only one who had it. And this is the only one who had this chart. because I was able to get access to the other charts. So it got me thinking. And what I started thinking about was how often would we have a lineup like this? If you know anything about astrology, every year it's a different lineup. Very rarely do you have one of these lineups where you'll see your sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars all lined up in one planet. It's really a rare phenomenon. And so I started, and sometimes it could happen every 5 years, every 10 years. You just don't know when. You've got to really sit and get your calculator out and see when it's going to happen. And so I decided to look, when is this going to happen again? Because she was born in 2010, and it did not happen in 2011. It did not happen in 2012. Well, guess what? This phenomenon is happening right now as we speak.
So the pups that'll be born in this in a litter around the same time could be matched theoretically.
Right. They could potentially have this psychic ability. Now, what this gives us is a tool. Instead of waiting 2 years to find out if a dog has it or doesn't have it, how can you know if he has it or does not have it unless you put him with a person with epilepsy and you test it? Well, usually they're not. It takes about 2 years to go through this whole training process before they're even being tested. And so what happens is these people with epilepsy are getting these dogs and then they're not working out. They're not able to do it. What if we had a way that we could predict which dogs typically are going to have this unique ability before they're even born? If my theory is true, then we may have a tool to take a whole calendar year and pick out the best dates for these intuitive dogs. So what that means is that right now, from February 26th to March 10th, Pisces is lining up in all 5 planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. All astrologers everywhere are talking about this great phenomenon. Now, I feel like it's the best year to test this theory, because I have one success story to say it is absolutely true here. What I've been doing through a video that I put out and through talking, I've been talking to different breeders across the country that have dogs that have this ability, and they have been sending me these dogs' birthdays so I can test this theory on not just one dog, but on many dogs. And guess what I'm finding out? They have Pisces, and they have another planet. They have Cancer. Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is your second most highly intuitive and psychic planet. You have your water sign, Scorpio.
And nurturing as well.
Yes. So we may have 2 months out of the year that really give these dogs this ability. Now, just to say, with each year changing and not having this huge power punch like we are going to have it this year, that doesn't mean each year we won't have lineups. It might be 2 or 3 planets, and that might even be enough. That's what I need. That's what I am trying to research right now. What planets are the most powerful to give these dogs this gift?
Or the combinations of the planets and even the aspects as well.
Yes. Yes, it gets a lot deeper than kind of what we're talking about right now. Since you know about astrology, you know what I'm talking about. We have to look at the aspects, and a lot of these dogs. Now, what's great about working with breeders across the country sending me these birth dates is a lot of them have the time, so I can also look at the rising sign, the ascendant, and kind of look at personality and different things as well. So it's kind of exciting, I think.
That's very exciting. It could transfer to therapy horses as well. I know they're using therapy horses for people who have, MS and stuff, muscular, those types of, all types
Absolutely.
of things, injuries, spinal cord injuries.
Yes, yes. And autism. Autism is fantastic. I worked with a lot of autistic kids. I had a horse riding program where I worked with a lot of kids for over 10 years. And that's what I did is I would take these old retired horses. I wish I knew what I knew now, because that would have really aided me in knowing these horses' characteristics even better. Fortunately, being an animal behaviorist, I knew them intuitively myself, but having the astrological lineup to back up my thinking would have really just helped that. But I was able to match them with kids, and certain horses got along with certain kids, and so it was really a unique situation where I saw a lot of growth in these young girls' lives because of these horses.
Did you happen to watch during the Olympics, the Special Olympics, the dressage?
Oh yeah.
It was amazing. There was some people, and they had physical and mental disabilities, and these horses completely took care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was some that didn't, there was one woman who didn't have legs.
Wow. I think
And
I've
that,
seen her. I've actually followed her Facebook page. I know you're talking about. Yeah, it's amazing. This is a time in our life. I think that, we had a period of time that the natural horsemanship concept came through over the last 15 years. And it really opened up a new world to people working with horses, because instead of the old cowboy way, now we started, everybody could learn this wonderful communication with horses and what people are doing with them now, and with the Mustangs and with, like you said, the therapy, the miniature horses. Those are things we're doing because of this movement of natural horsemanship.
and they're choosing those miniature horses now because their lifespans are longer than dogs.
Yes, that's a really good point. That's a great point. You're right. And they're longer than even regular horses. I mean, they'll live at 45, 50 compared to what, about 25, 30 for an average horse.
Well, I just had one that exited my little small ranch at 37.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that was a full grown horse.
Yeah, this was an old thoroughbred mare. She was on two legs
Wow.
at the end.
Well, you were doing something right.
This is really.
Are you there?
I don't hear. I can
Still
hear
here?
you.
No, I'm
Oh,
still. Yeah, this is
Weird.
really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about some of these videos and the stuff that you're doing for Animal Crackers Monthly.
Okay. Well, what I basically am doing, I went back to school at 44 years old. I'm a student at Full Sail University in the creative writing degree program. I'm working on a book and basically telling my life story of working with animals. I had this ranch, like I said, that I worked with horses and kids. I built it from the ground up, and it just changed my life. The stories that I have of what these horses and did for these kids and did for me and did for so many lives, these stories are just incredible. And I just believe they need to be told. And I'm working on that through a book, but I'm also working on that through my video blog, where you can go on there. My videos are anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, and I give some instructions. I also have some other stories of other people with animals giving instructions. They're very educational. They're very soothing. They're very calming. I talk about my perspectives, and there's just so many things you can learn from the video blog.
Well, we want to hear some of your amazing stories about animal healers, but we're going to take a short commercial right now, okay?
Okay, absolutely.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at PsychicAccess.com.
Okay, we're back with Christa Pynn, and she was just about to tell us some one of the stories, some of the amazing animal healing stories. So, Krista, are there some special animals that just kind of pop out at you, and you could give us some stories about, some of the things they did to help people with their own personal healing?
Oh yeah, I think I could come up with something for you. Um, right off the top. No, I'm thinking back to a little girl that was one of my students. She actually came for writing lessons with a friend of hers. And the interesting thing was her friend was very confident and dragged her with her to come to these writing lessons. Well, her friend kind of dwindled away, and this girl kept coming for lessons. But the interesting thing about this girl, she was about 11, she never talked. She didn't even talk at home. Her shyness was almost just debilitating to her life. And even her parents were like, we don't know what to do with her. She's a beautiful young girl. But she just she just loved the horses, and she came every week for her lesson. And I didn't know how I was going to communicate with her because she literally would not look you in the eyes. But as soon as you would put her up on the horse, you would just see her countenance change. And I wasn't sure what kind of horse I could put with this girl, because if I gave her a horse that was, too fast or too much, it might really set her back because she just wasn't communicating. So I pulled out an old faithful horse of mine named Jenny, and she was just down the middle, just very confident. She was a leader, but she just listened to her rider. And this girl and Jenny I began to work with them, and pretty soon she began to ask me questions. She wanted to know the deeper things about riding. This gal ended up riding with me for about 5 years, ended up being one of my instructors, ended up learning to ride every horse I had on the ranch. Her parents couldn't believe the radical change in her life. They said, we can't even shut her up now. She was just a completely different kid at school. And that may sound really simple. That may sound like not such a big deal. But when, the look on that little girl's face, the fear in her face when she first came, and what that horse did for her, picking the right horse, a horse that she could build her confidence on, and seeing her come out of her shell over the years and end up being a top instructor working with other kids, is to me just a miraculous story of nobody else could reach this girl, but this horse did. And this is where having the ability to work with horses and people, being sensitive to them, which I was fortunate that I learned to be very sensitive and slowly build her confidence. But it was just a neat, and now she just went to college. She still keeps in touch with me. And she's going to some big animal science college, and she's just doing amazing. So it just continues to, those 5 years just continue to be powerful in her life.
What a great story. What was the astrological sign of Jenny?
You know what? I do not have that. And that's why I wish that I would have known this back then. But I do know that my dear little friend Tori was a Pisces. And interestingly enough, because I'm a Virgo sun, for anybody who is interested in knowing, but I am a Pisces rising and a Pisces moon. And, they're the opposite of the zodiac. So can you imagine being a perfectionist, but then living in circles? So it's like perfect circles. It's very chaotic in my mind at times. But when I use these gifts together, I think that's why I was so attracted to this dog, because she's got all of this Pisces. And this little friend of mine who was a Pisces, I didn't know at the time why I understood how she felt, because I've been a pretty confident person all my life, so I didn't deal with shyness. But my Pisces, that Pisces allows us to actually feel what other people are feeling. And that is a gift of that. So I end up having, my husband's a Pisces, all my best friends are Pisces, because of my rising and my moon sign, I'm drawn to Pisces.
That is so interesting. And now that you mention that, you talk about your rising. If I think about the animals and the people in my life, they're mostly fire sign, and my rising sign is Leo.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a lot of fire. Now, so this even transfers into like problem animals. You know, if somebody comes to you with a problem animal. We talked a little bit in the beginning of the show about that, but maybe I can use, for example, my greyhound when I got him, and I know what month he was born in, but you don't know the exact date because you can't get it. So I think he's either a Gemini or a Taurus. He's
Okay.
right in there. It has
Okay.
literally taken him. He's been with me for 8 years now. It's taken that long to come out of his shell after being a working dog.
Yeah. See,
And
now
he,
if he would be really interesting if we obviously knew the other signs, but let's just take that particular, let's just say he's even close to the cusp in there, if we were trying to
hmm
get a picture of him. Gemini being ruled by Mercury, that's a lot of nervous energy. It's a lot of energy that he probably deals with inside. Now, he could have a moon sign, he could have something that, doesn't allow him to express that very well. So it's kind of like the outside of you looks like you're okay. But if you have any Gemini or anything like that in there, you've got a lot of energy. Your mind's going 100 miles an hour. That's why this becomes really exciting when I can get a birth date on a pet and their owner. That's basically what I'm doing is the consultation. It's a 1-hour consultation on the phone. And I take your animal's birth date and I take yours and we work together. And then with my animal experience, I'm able to kind of guide different behavioral ideas, or at least guide you in a direction to where you could get some help if you need it. But
and that comes in handy with people who have problem dogs and, other animals that they just can't figure out. And
absolutely.
there's a lot of people. I've got friends, they're not married. Their animals are their kids. That's their family.
Yes, they're everything. I just did a chart the other day of a lady and her horse had triple Gemini. And I did the chart. I have a whole thing that I do, but it's not just like you can read it like a human chart. You have to interpret it through the animal's eyes, and that comes with my experience of working with horses and animals. But I got this picture through everything I was reading that this horse had some real nervous energy, and maybe he was a cribber or a pacer or different things like that. And sure enough, when I sent her, I did a write-up for her. She couldn't believe it because the horse had been a cribber, been a pacer. I said, you need to get this horse out in the pasture. You need to get him out. Everybody wants to put him in a small box stall and make him real fluffy and comfortable. They're horses. They need to get out and move. And so she made that change. The pacing's completely calmed down. Cribbing's hard to get rid of forever, but it's calmed down. And it was just seeing that this horse had so much Mercury going on, that influence. And I wouldn't have, I couldn't have told her that across the country, but by looking at the chart, I can see what kind of energies these animals are having to work with. So
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And the whole mirroring of the personalities that does happen um, over time. I've got a dog that smiles, and we actually taught her to smile. She mimicked smiling. We smiled at her, and she smiled
wow.
back. And
Yeah.
now you say to her, Nikki, give us a smile, and she gives you a big one.
Aw. Well,
She'll even
that is
smile when
proof
she's
right
in
there.
trouble.
Yeah, that's such an awesome example. That is such proof right there because they are looking. I've seen that a lot with people. I've had, people have come to me that are older, not just the kids that I've worked with their horses. And I had a lady one time that was really battling with some anger, and she just felt like her horse needed to be obedient no matter what. And I was trying to show her that her horse was confused in her communication. It wasn't that he was being disrespectful. He literally didn't understand what she was saying. And her anger was just so frustrated because she wanted to look good. We want our animals to make us look good. And kind of like our kids, we take them out when they're not behaving. People sometimes feel embarrassed, but you can't bring that ego to your animals. It's not fair to them. They don't live with that kind of ego, especially people who ride horses. And you have to realize that, you're a partnership. And we went around and around and around. And I just finally kept looking at her and saying, until you let go of your anger, this problem is not going to go away. And you won't be able to see what it is you need to offer your horse with anger blinding you. And this ego of, like this dominant, I'm going to control you. Because horses are prey animals. We are predatory. So they, again, are interpreting control as being a predator. It doesn't mean we aren't to be good leaders, but good leaders are fair. And that's some of the stuff that I'm teaching through my video blog, through Animal Crackers Monthly. You'll see videos that talk about those things and how to work within ourselves, get ourselves right. Even breathing around an animal properly. If you're going to saddle a horse, that you time yourself with their breathing and you slow yourself down. So many people have problems saddling their horses because they're nervous and they're trying to make it super tight, and they're afraid it's going to fall off. And all of those feelings are rooted in fear. And now you're going to take something and put it on a horse, tighten it as tight as you can in the most vulnerable area of their body, and expect they're not going to start wiggling around or setting back or biting you because you're threatening them. And it doesn't have to be a bad experience if we'll just, sometimes it's as simple as just slowing down and taking a breath and being in the moment. So if you're getting ready to go saddle your horse and all your friends, you're getting ready to go on a ride, as humans, we're thinking about getting out there with our friends. And that might be 15 minutes away. And so we're bringing the anxiety of the future to the moment. And the horse doesn't understand we're going to go on a trail ride. He's right there in the moment. So just as simple as when you're around your animals, be in the moment. Just bring the emotions of the moment, the feelings of the moment. Because it's as simple as if you're going to take your dog to the vet and you're getting ready to put him in the car. Well, of course, we're going to start feeling nervous because that brings anxiety to us to take our animal to the vet. Just what's going to happen, how are they going to feel, all of those things. You have to get emotional control of yourself working around animals and be in the moment. Reassure them before you get in the car, slow down, reassure them while you're in the car, reassure them while you walk through the door, reassure them while you're waiting. Slow it down in small pictures. That's how animals see things. And when you do that, it's amazing how they will calm down and start to listen to you and look to you for reassurance. And you'll have a completely different animal just by making that one simple change.
Well, what about cats, though? Cats are different. They're so independent. What has been your experience with cats?
I wonder if they're not a lot more intuitive than we ever give them credit for. I think they're little messengers. I really do. But they have their own thing going on. But people who have cats and love cats know the bond that can be there. And I had a cat one time, and my son was a teenager. And one night he came in, and I was giving him the mom act because he was late. And we're arguing back and forth. This cat jumped on my lap because she didn't like that I was arguing with my son. And she's meowing and trying to get my attention and trying to stop it. And she was just really upset. And she got my attention. We both actually started laughing. It kind of lightened the moment. But I thought, wow, I've never had a cat try to talk to me like that. And she did not like that. The atmosphere was upsetting at that moment. So I think if we just listen more, a lot of times we don't listen and we miss them trying to tell us things.
Well, we have set ourselves apart from the animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. And if this is the ancients were a lot closer, I think, and they revered them, even as gods, like especially in ancient Egypt and places like that. But there's just so much in this modern world of, we're always in a hurry and we're dominating and we're telling them what to do and we're
Hmm.
shoving them here and shoving them there and not seeing them as the incredible beings and the incredible healing beings that they
Hmm.
are. They've been known, I mean, they bring down people's blood pressure, everything. They say that
Yeah.
people who have pets live longer.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I agree. That is such a perfect point. Well, think about, even X amount of years ago, people rode horses for their survival. And these horses were out in large pastures. There wasn't Mack trucks driving down the road. They weren't put in horse trailers. They weren't, these horses were worked every single day. So people rode for a different reason. They rode to feed their families. They rode with intention. And the horses love when you ride with a purpose. Now you take our day and age, we ride as a hobby, we ride for entertainment. We see these horses as, almost some type of, trophy to represent us. That's, the world that we see around us. So now, instead of riding for survival and having a bond that could save your life at any given time that you have to have, we're riding to show everybody how great we are. And think about that's bringing that ego into it. And I just can't emphasize enough. Even if you show horses, I love to show horses. I have done so many awesome things with horses. I'm not against any of those things, but I just feel strong that you have to go, whatever you're doing with your animal, whether it's your dog, your horse, they're your partner. They didn't ask to be put in that situation. This horse did not ask to live the life we're putting it in. He is really a victim of what we desire. Now, does that mean that's bad? No, it just means that we need to respect them more. We need to respect the gift that they give us, that we can desensitize them to our world, and they will do amazing things for us instead of be mad at them. Or, you go to these environments where you see shows and people are hitting their horses and jerking on their chains, and because they're mad that the horse is not performing. And I just look in shock, because I think the fact that we're all even here enjoying these wild 1,000-pound prey animals in this kind of capacity, and they're willing to do what they do for us, we should just be in awe. We should be very humble of the gift we have with these animals.
Well, you're
So,
making me feel guilty. I better go down and ride tomorrow.
I don't want to do that. I've done
Oh,
it. I've done those things. I was trained those ways, and this is the process of the things I do.
oh, well, thank you, Krista. We've
Yes.
we've come to the end of the interview, and I could sit here and talk to you for hours, I'm sure. But I just want to thank you for
Okay.
coming on the show. You'll have to keep us updated on some of the stuff that's going on.
And if
And
it's okay if I say, if anybody ends up with contact with these dogs during these dates, throw me an email. I'm looking for people to help me in this research right now. And also remember, I don't want everybody to go run out and everybody go get one, because they're going to be very, very sensitive dogs that need to be handled in a very, very sensitive way with the right type of training. They cannot go in high stress, chaotic environments, because these dogs are going to be so intuitive. So, I just want to make that little disclaimer, but if you do end up with one, or you have a litter and you notice anything that I'm talking about, please contact me for my research so that I can, track every type of, every dog during these next 3 weeks that I can.
that sounds great. Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to give out your information again.
Okay.
For anybody out there who wants to make contact with Christa Pynn, visit her website at www.crystallyn.biz, ChrystalLyn.biz, or
Two N's.
two N's.
Two N's. crystallyn.biz.
Okay, two N's.
Yes.
www.animalcrackersmonthly.com. Either they could find you either place, right?
Either place, and crackers is with a K. So I'm all over the place. You can see my videos and you can check me out if you have any questions about this or your dogs. I'm open for consultations, and you can email me. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Christa. You have a great evening.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers, get access, psychic access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.